All right, today I'll be showing you how to replace a CV boot on the King Quad 750. This is going to be the exact same as the rest of the King Quads, the 450, the 500, the 700, and the 750. This particular model is going to be on the 2009 King Quad 750. So first thing you're going to do is pull the rear tire off. Takes 17 millimeter socket typically. We've got aftermarket rims and tires on here. And the King Quad has a tapered nut that looks like that. And so you want to make sure, going back together, just like any other vehicle, you do that in a crisscross pattern, just to make sure that those are centered. And then a couple miles after you ride the machine, you want to go ahead and recheck those lug nuts. You can see the nut that we have on the end here. What I'm going to do is grab a pair of side dikes and going to remove this cotter pin here. Straighten that up as best as you can. Then I'll take, after it's straight, I'll take and kind of tap it down there. If you're able to get it out of there undamaged, you can reuse these. You just want to make sure it doesn't break. So there's the pin there. Runs through there. We'll grab a socket here, remove this larger nut. This is an 1 3/16" nut. And it shouldn't be extremely tight. You've got this cotter pin in there that's going to hold that in position, so it doesn't have to be extremely tight. You do want it snug just so that your hub isn't able to move around on there. Make sure that those splines aren't getting worn down from that moving around. To replace wheel bearings now at this point is fairly easy. You've got this hub or this knuckle almost completely off, and I'll show you what we need to do there to replace those wheel bearings. We're not going to need to do that at this point. All right, we've got a 14 millimeter nut here and then a 12 millimeter bolt running through there. And then same with the bottom side. You take and tap those out. Sometimes it takes a rubber mallet to do that. All right, then we're able just to pull those bolts out there like that. Push that one out the bottom there. Sometimes they do get stuck in here just from water and debris running through this area here. Should all potentially be enclosed with that bolt, but sometimes you get water in there, causing those bolts to be a bit of a challenge to get off there. So got the hub out here, and or the carrier. You got bearings inside here, wheel bearings that can go out. Pull the seal here, those bearings will come out this direction, and so replacing the bearings on here is fairly easy. Now we've got our CV shaft ready to come out here, and I'm going to pull this out, and what's going to happen is I'm going to grab a couple pair of clean rags, because the CV shaft that runs into that differential there will leak oil out, and you could add oil to it, or if you're draining oil, servicing this machine to begin with, just do it at this point. But we've already serviced this one, and so you got a little bit of pressure there. Try to keep it centered, try to pull it straight out. Just tap it several times, and then it'll just pull right out, just like that. You can see there immediately oil started coming out of there. Maybe you can't see from the angle of the camera, but I like to take and push a rag in there just to keep that oil from running out. So got the CV shaft off there. This joint has just ripped, or this boot has just ripped, so this joint is still good. We've caught it in time here, but we will want to get this replaced so that we don't have to replace that CV shaft. So we'll go ahead and replace the boot at this time. All right, we've got the CV shaft on the bench now, and I will go ahead and replace this CV boot. Nice thing is about the CV shaft that we have here, the inner boot is ripped as opposed to the outer. If you have the outer boot ripped over on this side here, you've got to pull the inner joint apart, pull the inner boot off to get to this boot here. So inner boot here, we don't have to touch the outside boot at all. What I like to do at this point, take your side dikes, or you can take a pair of a screwdriver here and open these clamps up. I try not to destroy them. I'll show you why here in a little bit. But I just tap kind of the little holder areas there. You take and pull that up just like that, and then you're able just to kind of push that off to the side there. Do the same thing on the the inner side there. We can just lift that off of there. So we've got our clamps now that are off of there. Take and we'll pull this boot back. I'll twist this side. You know, normally a boot would be all one piece here. We've got two pieces. If you've got just a small rip in it, you know, you can I just kind of wiggle one side here, kind of break that seal free, and then take the outside, just peel it off of there. Now we've got your joint that looks like this. And I'll take and push that back just like that. If you take your finger, or sometimes I'll take a rag here, and I'll find there's grooves inside of this coupling here. I'll try to get it to a spot where you can see it, but there's grooves inside here. Once it's all cleaned up, I'll show you a picture. But you take and get your pick in behind there, and there is a ring, and it takes two hands to do it a lot of times. Take and push that joint, find that hole there. Now you can get your pick in behind there if you can find your groove, and you just go ahead and pull this clip out. And that's what your clip looks like there. This is kind of a dirty job. So then now we take, lift out, there's your coupling there. You can see there where that groove is on there. That clip will just sit right down inside that groove. So going back together, I'll show you what that entails, but you can take that coupling, move it off of there. Now what I do, I'll take a clean rag, wipe this out. It's got a lot of grease in here. And you want to be able to see your snap ring in there. So if you can see the end, that's the main part. We'll grab our snap ring pliers that fit that snap ring. You can do angled or straight, either way is fine. Just go ahead and grab onto that snap ring there. Pull it off of there. Be really careful if this thing is not held tight. It could go flying across the room. You'll spray grease all over the place because this grease is really messy. And so I take and I'll set that aside then. And now you can take and pull this joint off of here. And just pull it off just like that. And there's your joint there. There's your balls, and those balls will fall out. We'll actually clean those up really well. This boot was just ripped and we caught it right away, but still any kind of rocks and debris could have got in there. And if you just sit there and let those rocks float around in there while you, even with a new boot on there, it could destroy that joint. So take then, a lot of times I'll take and try to keep this all together. What this does when you just pull it off just like this, kind of cleans that shaft up really well, and then you take a rag then and clean it up. I'm going to use this boot. I've got a handful of boots, and I sell all kinds of them, but instead of matching part numbers, I got different brands, varieties of boots. I'm going to match these size up. Main thing is this size here, and then this size here, and then the length of the boot. So if you've got a boot that's somewhat intact, you can do that. A lot of times, by the time we catch these boots being ripped, they are destroyed completely, or a customer will take and use that, even a ripped boot, for the longest amount of time, and then want it replaced. Well, that boot at that point is destroyed. If your boot is destroyed completely, I would just replace that joint, because more than likely that joint is going to be bad. It may feel good, may look good, but when it comes down to it, it's going to be clicking. It won't be long until you're replacing that shaft. All right, we've got the joints cleaned up now. Now we're going to go back together with it. I've used what felt like an entire box of rags to clean everything up. Just kind of a messy part here. But we've got this coupling here completely cleaned up. And one thing you do want to inspect before going back together, you can kind of see your major wear spots where these balls are riding most of the time. You want to make sure that those weren't grooved or cupped at all. Make sure there's no debris in there. Make sure that there is no jagged edges in that metal, or that will cause a ticking sound and will cause your joint to go bad sooner than later. So got everything cleaned up, got our bearing here cleaned up, or our actual joint here. And then what I'm going to do, I've got two different styles of clamps, and I've I've got the Moose boot here, and I've showed you that in the description down below there, what boot we're using. And Moose just makes a great boot. The other one is EPI. They make a cold weather boot, which is extremely durable. It feels like a thinner boot, but it is. You could almost take a knife or a pick and push against it, and you'd almost have a difficult time poking a hole through. All right, so we are going to go ahead and slip everything back together. Like I said, we've got two different style of bands I'm going to show you how to use here. We've got the old style here that came on your machine, and then as well as the Moose, the new style, which EPI uses the same one, several different manufacturers. So that's that style there, and I'll show you how to use that with the CV shaft banding tool. So I'm going to go ahead now and take grease, and if you rip this right, you've got kind of an area there we go, that you just squeeze into, and you almost fill this coupling up about halfway full, maybe even more than that, but just really fill that thing full of grease. Not full. Okay, we've got a good amount of grease in there. You can kind of see, you know, if it's settled, it would end up being about half full. So we can keep this handy. We are going to use the rest of this, just not at this point. Next thing you're going to want to do, if you are using this style of band, which we're going to, or the inside one, which would be this style, you would want to make sure and slip that on at that time. If not, you can put your boot on there, slide that all the way past. Then your clip can go on at any point. Take your joint there, make sure you clean that up really good. We blew through here with compressed air. We blew through there with cleaner just to clean that out really good. Any kind of rocks or debris, you do want to be able to work it a little bit around. Just spent a lot of time cleaning this up. Make sure you get all the debris out of there. And it's going to sit this way. I hope you can see it in the video. Open. It's kind of a deeper area here, and this side is going to go on first, just like that. Then you're going to take your snap ring there and your snap ring pliers, and you're going to install that. It's a lot cleaner now, and I should be able to see, make sure that falls into place there. Make sure you can hear that snap, hence the snap ring. And then I like to squeeze those bearings into place there. Next thing you're going to want to do, we are going to use this band here, I do believe. So I'm going to set that on there just like that, or you could slide it on there on this side, doesn't really matter either way. And then now what you're going to do is take and push this on. And what I do at this point is I'll push this on there about as far as you can get. You want to make sure that grease is being pushed up through those balls there. And then you can work that around if you want, but at this point now I'm going to take this clip here, and I can still see the groove to make sure we're seated properly. I'm going to take and push that into place. Again, you can kind of hear that snap into place. And got that snapped into place there. Make sure it's not going to come apart. Now what you can do is take and push that farther on there to make sure that grease is going through all those balls there. And then I'll just put another layer around the top here. You just want to make sure that you've got plenty of grease in there. I don't like to get it around the outside here, and in fact I'll take and clean that here in a little bit. If you get it on the outside there, what happens is your boot will look like it's leaking around that outer edge. After you start your four-wheeler and run it down the road, it'll look like you've got a leaky area around that band there. So just like to clean that up really good so that there's no confusion there. Go ahead and do that. Now I can take and I'll push my boot down, slide that into place. I try to keep that shaft straight. I'm going to turn it so you guys can see it. Try to keep it straight so that we're not pushing grease out around that sealed area. So if you can reuse these bands, they are really simple. Sometimes you got a little bit larger boot on there, thicker boot, which might be the case here, but we'll give it our best shot to use this. Otherwise, I'll show you how to use this one, and then we'll put the other one on. That comes with the boot, the other bands does. So take that, you've got that boot or that band in that area there. Nope, not gonna work. Okay, so what you do on this one is you just fold this down, fit it in between those grooves there, and then take side dikes or a small hammer there, pinch it down on top of that band there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just take this off. Since I've showed you how to do it, these bands are cheap, so I'm just going to cut that off there so we don't have to take that joint apart again. And I'll use the type of band that comes with these boots. And they are a strap like this. Take and wrap it around your CV shaft there. And there'll be two different sizes here. One's longer, one's shorter. Longer one obviously is going to go around the bigger side of the boot. Now you got this banding tool here, and I do sell these. Check my store for these here. This one here is put on hundreds of boots, and so the actual cutting tool is getting dull. About time to upgrade these. They are not expensive tools, and they sure are handy to have. If you're doing CV boots at all, I would suggest getting one of these. Take and squeeze. You don't want to squeeze tight, otherwise you could rip this the actual band part of it here. So I take and put some pressure on it, and then what I do is I'll fold this around, and you can either take and move the CV shaft, or you can take your pliers and go like this, but I don't want to not allow you guys to see. So take and fold that over as far as you can get it. The main thing is you want to make a crease in it. Now I take and I'll pull this tool out. Well, that's not true. Sometimes I'll cut it first, but you do want to make for sure that you've made a crease in that, otherwise their band's just going to loosen up. So take them this side, take this, slide it up, and that'll cut that band. And take then, slide it over in between these grooves. I take a small hammer and I'll tap on that joint there just to kind of make sure that it's creased there. Then I'll take and I'll tap down on these little pegs to go over top of that band there. Now I'll take and I'll slide this into position here. We got it there. Now we got our little band here. Wrap it around, slide it through there so it makes a circle. Same thing here. We'll take this old strap out of here. Do it so you guys can see it there. Slide that through the cutting area, then slide it through the tension area. Push it through there. I've got the arm on this cutting area off. I don't like, because sometimes it'll get in the way here when you're trying to twist that around, so we'll figure out where it needs to be and then we'll take and cut it. So inspect it, make sure it's all in that groove there. Take and turn that. It'll kind of position itself into the groove that's on the shaft. Again, making sure you don't turn it too terrible tight. If you turn it too tight, you'll just rip that little bracket off there. Take then, now we know where this cutter needs to be. Take, cut it. I'll just slide out of there. And again, take my hammer. Make sure it's down. Take the two clips. Make sure that you don't get your hammer and tap on the actual boot itself, or you could potentially make a hole in that. If those don't come that way, you can take a pair of pliers or a pair of side dikes and just kind of start them to bend them over. There we go. And then I always take a hammer then, get them completely flat. Now you've got a sharp edge here. Some guys will actually take and fold that over. That adds a level of difficulty, and if you can tap it down, I kind of tap it away from the boot. Otherwise, if this side is sticking up and you're doing this number, your axle's doing this number, it will the corner of this will catch your boot. So pretty common problem to even rip it before you even get the axle back onto the machine. So take and make sure that's tapped down. It's not going to loosen up. It's not going to pop up. So as long as you get it tapped down, and again, more specifically on this corner here, you won't have any issues with it coming back up. So make sure that those are secure. You can't twist them either direction. Make sure you don't have grease squirting out either direction. I like to, again, clean this up really well so that we don't have any oil that appears to be squirting out here. And we'll go ahead and put this back on the machine. All right, we've got this CV shaft ready to go back together. You can see possibly from the angle there that we've got oil. that's been dripping out of this differential. Just kind of created a mess for us to clean up, but that does mean we've got good oil inside there, but we will want to double check that. I'll show you that. We can go ahead now. I try to keep this shaft as straight as possible going back together. So I'd like to take and pull these rags and then very quickly slide this shaft in there. You do want to make sure though that you don't bend that seal, don't damage that seal going back in. So don't get in too big of a hurry that you cause more damage, but should just slide in just like that. Not a lot of difficulty there. And then you've got your CV shaft in there. I take that. You wiggle it around a little bit, make sure everything's seated properly, put some pressure in there to make sure it's sealed up. Now we've got our top A-arm here, our top arm here, and then our knuckle here that we're gonna put on. And we can go ahead and slide that on at that time. Make sure again that those bearings and seals are in good condition before you go back together. We'll slide that on. The bottom's a little bit wider than the top, so you can't get those mixed around, or you won't get very far putting it back together. Longer bolt on the bottom, obviously. Slide that into position. Then the top, make sure that your spacers are in the correct order. I'm gonna pull one of these off just so you can see. We've got a cap here, we've got a bushing on the inside. Inside here, if you're wondering, there is a washer that sits inside there. So if it happens to come apart there, that's the order that it goes in there. Take and slide that into place. That arm's you're able to move that arm around where it needs to be. So I'm gonna take and actually use a little bit of oil, put it on here just to help it slide through easier. We had a little bit of a difficulty getting it to slide off there. We've got good oil on the bench here that we can utilize sliding through here. So we'll put that in position there. As that's lined up, you take and just slide that through there. All right, get our two nuts on there. And the rest of this is pretty self-explanatory. You guys are smart enough to know how to go back together with it, but we'll just do this quick just in case there's any questions. 14 millimeter and our 12 millimeter here. Snug these up. These are lock nuts, so they probably won't work themselves loose if you get them snug enough. So make sure that this is area is all clean. Make sure there's nothing in that splined area there. Then you can take and slide this on. If you happen to be pushing your axle out when you're doing this, you won't do that very far, but it is possible that is happening. Just take and put your hand in behind here, push against it to get that hub on there. Slide our 1 3/16 nut on there. Take and tighten this down. Now again, you don't have to be extremely tight on this one. You do want it snug, and you don't ever want to get it to a position where you loosen it up. So I just I'll turn it slowly until I find a position that's lined up with that cotter pin there. You can take and straighten this keeper out, or we can replace it. We do a little bit of both. And if it's the first time that's ever been taken apart, 9 times out of 10 you can reuse that pin. If it's been taken apart a time or two before, you just don't know, go ahead and replace it. So take then and bend these up. And there'll be some companies that'll just bend one of them. I like to at least do a slight bend in the other one. That way, if this happens to break off for whatever reason, that you've got another side of that piece holding it on. So we've got our hub then on there and attached. All we have to do then is put the wheel on. One more thing I want to show you quick before we finish up this video here's the cap for your rear differential. I've done an overview video of this machine, so check that out. It does look like we are a little low on oil there, so you fill that up to the top of that cap. Pretty simple to do there, or excuse me, the bottom of that cap, and use a wet gear brake oil. So that's the oil here that I like to use. It's Kawasaki oil. You can use any ATV wet gear brake, but the reason why you use a wet gear brake is because the brakes and the gears are in this housing there, and you don't want to, if you use just gear oil, your brakes aren't cooling, it's not the right kind of oil for this assembly here. So fill that oil up until it is starting to come out of your fill cap area. Obviously you're gonna want your machine level, so we're gonna drop this down a little bit before we top this oil off just to get an accurate reading, but it's not gonna make a huge difference. But you can see there, the wheels are a little ways off of the ground, causing it to be a little unlevel. So thanks for watching. If you've liked this video or found it helpful, please subscribe, like, and share. If you've got questions, please leave those in the comments below. Different ideas to help other guys out, make sure you leave those in the comments below. Appreciate you guys' feedback, and if there's more videos you want me to make on this machine, let me know those in the comments below, as well as I like to make videos that are helpful to others. So thanks for watching.